Right, Ross, we are thrilled to be here in Derbyshire. With a grin on your face, you're absolutely loving life.
I am.
We are here at White Peak Distillery, home of Wore Works Whiskey, with the founder Max Vaughan. Thank you so much for joining us. And we've got quite a treat, actually, on the table today. Max, what can you tell us about this whiskey here?
So this is Wore Works Bourbon Barrel. It's a release that came out very recently. And it's our second kind of core product.
Interesting.
So something we expect to be continuing with for ad infinitum.
Sure. This is following on from the Kuduro.
Yes,
right?
yeah. So we've now got two core releases that we'll have available on an evergreen basis.
Nice.
And it's at the warehouse we're stood in, probably about 80% of the casks in here are made up of bourbon barrels and STR.
Yeah.
So it's certainly a key component of our wood program.
And you're trying to let the distillery character show through here by using bourbon barrels, small casks as well, 200 litre barrels. Let that little lightly peated element you've got going on here shine through. And be interesting because using smaller casks, you're a relatively new distillery, founded in 2018. We've tried quite a lot of your range in a whole variation of oak. But it's well known I like quite plain, simple bourbon cask because I like to learn the distillery.
Yeah.
And this is also your newest child.
Yes.
This is your newest release, right? So this is going to be your representation of the distillery en masse-ish, even though you're a relatively small batch, still about 3,000 bottles, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
And a generous strength and natural colour. I think this is over 50%, if I'm right.
53.
53.4.
Which for a core range product is
incredibly
very,
generous.
Very generous.
Yeah.
So this one, as we say, there's no kind of overbearing cask influence. So it should be that sort of distillery DNA shining through. What is it that people can expect in this that will taste definitively of Wore Works?
Yeah, well, I guess if we kind of just drill back a bit into the way we make whiskey, so we do very long fermentation, and we're trying to create some fruity notes that are going to carry forward into distillation, and then the way we run the stills, we're trying to capture that as well. And I think that married with let's say the less active bourbon barrels that we're using means a lot of that kind of fruit-forward distillery character definitely comes to the fore.
Yeah, and even though being lightly peated, you take such an early cut that actually it's really generally light and fresh on the nose.
Yes.
And then you're going to get that touch of smokiness, that kind of earthy, savoury character on the back of the palate.
Yeah.
So that's what we're expecting.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think with this one, it's even slightly on that kind of tobacco type spectrum as well on the finish.
And what's your thoughts with giving us a generous presentation at a higher strength? You think it drinks well at this strength, or you're just trying to give the customer that kind of freedom? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, but both things really. So we've not bottled anything less than 46 ABV since we started, but really what we do with most of our releases is we sit down as a team internally and we just kind of change the ABV until we at the point where we think we've hit a sweet spot.
Okay.
So we think it presents itself well at this 53.4%. But then also in terms of having now two releases in our core range, we wanted them to be different in terms of ABV, so that the consumer's going to have a slightly different experience. But yeah, absolutely. If someone wants to add some water or however they take their whiskey, then there's lots of opportunity to do that with the bourbon barrel.
Barrel.
In terms of bourbon barrels, obviously, as we said, the cask doesn't dominate. It doesn't lose that distillery character. Some would say it's a great cask for further aging. Is that, I assume you've got stock of bourbon barrels, you've left spirit to maybe put it away in a dusty corner for 10, 15 years and see what happens, or is there?
Yeah, no, I mean, we've certainly invested a lot in our inventory, and really once we got comfortable with the spirit, almost making as much as we could afford. So yeah, for sure, a lot of what's around us today is going to be seeing 6, 7, 8 years plus in the cask eventually.
And do you keep everything's on site in this? We've been brought up, we're in a warehouse. The viewers can obviously see that, but it's our favourite place to drink whiskey. Never mind with the founder of the distillery, but every cask is sold on site as well.
Yeah, and that was one of the nice things about finding this site is it was it was, let's say, big enough that we could see everything that we would do in the whiskey making process, including maturation, taking place here. So in terms of that kind of provenance piece of, you know, the place where the whiskey's made, you know, making a difference, well, it's all here. And for us, that just kind of adds something to the whiskey that we're making.
It's obviously very important to you, the history of the place. It's White Peak Distillery, but Wore Works is the brand name and the design of the bottle and everything.
Yeah, I mean, even the packaging, you've got provenance, heritage, and flavour.
Yeah.
So that's kind of your three pillars.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, provenance speaks to the fact that all our whiskey making takes place here, but also the history of this site. Yeah. And that also then continues into the heritage side of things. Yeah. And then flavour is what we really like to talk about in terms of our whiskey making.
Yeah, it's obviously very competitive as a new distillery. You need to make yourself, you know, stand out.
Yeah.
And what we would say from some of the previous expressions we've had is that the flavour profile has almost always surprised me for a relatively new distillery. Again, because you're a peated English single malt, which most people might not be aware of or have come across before. I'm hoping this is going to be my favourite expression that I've tried from you so far, because on paper it certainly is.
It ticks a lot of boxes.
Yeah. I'll let you open it for us because I can't wait any longer.
Yeah, with pleasure.
Would you be hesitant to describe yourselves as a peated single malt? Because obviously it's lightly peated, it's there, but I don't know, imagine from a marketing perspective to be where the peated single malt, you're going to attract your Lafroig fans, your Ardbeg fans, and if that's their thing, they're going to be disappointed.
Yeah, no, I agree, Laurie. I think we don't think of ourselves or characterise ourselves as making a peated whiskey, and it wasn't about wanting to be in that category. It was totally about the background flavour and the complexity that we found we were getting when we're doing our trials. And also, certainly in the English whiskey scene, it's a point of difference.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very excited to try this.
No, what a pleasure. Cheers.
Yeah. I'm going straight to nose. I can't wait.
Cheers.
Cheers. Oh, it's very clean on the nose.
It's very, very light,
a lot of candy style.
Say retro confectionery too.
Yeah.
Ross's favourite. I mean, it's almost like a white chocolate thing, actually.
Yeah,
For me. It's kind of sweet without being that artificial sweetness.
There's definitely some citrus there too. It's not an overwhelming kind of unapologetic vanilla from the bourbon. Give it a little taste. Great texture.
I must confess, this is the second time I've tried this. First time I thought it was, sorry, spoiler. First time I thought it was a little bit hot. I was like, could do with touch water. This time goes down so smooth.
Yeah.
And I think that, if anything, shows the importance of trying whiskey more than once.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
the way it's impacted by so many different things.
Yeah.
So the fact that I tasted it initially in my living room and now I'm tasting it in a warehouse, has that changed the way I pick up those
exactly
flavors.
It's all circumstantial.
Yeah.
I love the texture of it, and that's perhaps coming from the slightly more generous ABV.
Yes,
Is this the style of whiskey you lean towards? Have you got a preference? I know it's your distillery, but is there a kind of DNA that you prefer?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I like bourbon only maturation. I think it's always nice to try, whiskey from a distillery that's had that bourbon barrel only kind of influence.
It's almost a lot of pressure because there's nowhere to hide with bourbon barrels.
No.
If there's imperfections, if you've got a very sulphur forward whiskey or a whiskey that's been in poor quality of wood, you'll be found out straight away on the nose, sour notes or etc. The water makes this slightly sweeter. Again, it's so light and fresh. This is, it's the overused term in whiskey, but this is a breakfast whiskey as far as I'm concerned. This is something that I could have at any time. And it's really approachable.
Yeah. Are you picking up more or less smoke with a touch of water?
Less. Definitely less for me. Which, again, is maybe why I like it so much. It's more towards my kind of typical style. And even, I think, initially neat, because you get a little bit of, not wood spice, but maybe a slight spirit spice. The smoke is kind of dimmed down to previous expressions that we've had from White Peak Distillery. With water, less smoke certainly, a bit creamier, a bit more welcoming for all whiskey drinkers, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I think as I mentioned before, I think the smoke's kind of almost on like that tobacco spectrum. And this is certainly in terms of we don't do age statements, but this is our kind of oldest stock that's been bottled here.
And you're getting that kind of touch of maltiness and kind of barley sugar as well.
Yeah, it's a very approachable dram, actually. I think for something that's, as we say, lightly peated and a very generous strength, it is still very approachable.
And we might have a lot of people watching who are thinking English single malt. Okay,
it's great.
We've had a couple of them on the channel before. So this is my first ever visit to an English distillery. Now, if people are really getting hung up on it and saying they only drink a certain way, if you had that blind, there's no way you would be able to differentiate that between Irish and Scotch. It's a good quality malt whiskey, and that's
I'm sure I've told you this story before, but I remember we were exhibiting at a whiskey festival, and we were pouring drams blind, and we took along the Wore Works first release. So obviously your debut at making whiskey and, using probably fairly young stock. And we poured it to all these hardened whiskey drinkers all in Glasgow who know what they like. And we poured it to them blind and asked them to guess what they thought it was. And a lot of them thought Campbelltown, because they were picking up on that light
little bit of
smoke. And we thought, it's balanced, so it's, potentially Springbank, but it's not, it doesn't have spirity burn, so it's probably 15 plus years old. They're suggesting some very expensive whiskies, like Springbank 21 plus.
Unbelievable, right?
And then I nearly got thrown out for telling them it's,
we'll take that.
Less than 4-year-old.
And what's your thoughts? You're obviously very proud. You're from the area. You're bringing a distillery to your area. You're working with local breweries as well. You must be really proud to be an English single malt. Is it hard to compete? Is it it is obviously a growing market, but do you get a kind of bit of pushback for that, or generally been fairly well received so far?
I mean, generally, we don't find we get any pushback that we're English. I think we celebrate that on the
bottle, English single malt,
where it's being made. But
for the last 10 years or so, there are really good examples of success stories for English single malt as well.
Yeah, I mean, we like to talk about how we're making whiskey, where it's being made, and who's making it. So the fact we're in England is, it is what it is. But
you're using the same barley.
Yeah.
The water. Well, Scots might say the water's better, but you do. The peat. Where are you getting your peat from?
Yeah, so we get the peat is actually from Aberdeenshire.
Okay.
So yeah, it's I guess to the extent that peat is managed in a the proper way, then the best place to go really is where that's being done on.
And we're seeing a lot of that. We're talking about kind of the provenance of the peat as well.
Yeah.
And so Aberdeenshire being kind of bens and glens, rolling hills, kind of heavy. It would have been very dense forest land. You generally can get a different kind of smoke as well for your whiskey. Was that a conscious decision from you to go less kind of salty and sea spray and more kind of savoury?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think we certainly didn't want to be seen to be kind of, on the kind of coattails of the the peated Islay malts.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was definitely a conscious decision.
Really interesting. That's a belter of a dram. Yeah. I've finished mine, which I'm not meant to do. But that just goes to show how good it is.
Yeah, great whiskey, great core range product as well. I think it's a relief when you try whiskies like this that it's not just a single cask.
Yeah.
Like, it's already gone. So yeah, look forward to seeing this on bar gantries.
If you see
shops,
it, try and get it. Less than 3,000, let's say about 3,000 bottles. So an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, I know.
I'll cheers. Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers.
If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more Bevvy content. We want to hear what you think, your best whiskey experiences, the whiskies you want us to try. It's a really exciting journey we're on, so make sure to join us. Download the Bevvy app on Google Play and App Store to keep track of your whiskey journey, connect with your whiskey friends, keep track of your favourites, anything you could ever want to do with whiskey, all in one place. It's the definitive whiskey companion.